All right, we are diving into a story today that has it all. We're talking hopeless romantic, a totally chaotic first day of college, and a meet cute so perfect you'd swear it was written for a movie. Yep, this is the story of a first love at the university. Just for a second, I want you to think back to that feeling. You know, the sweaty palms, the racing heart, the whole trying to casually walk past their locker 10 times. Well, that is exactly where our story kicks off, with that one single unforgettable first encounter. Okay, so meet Candy. She describes herself as a hopeless romantic introvert, which is a tough combo. And on her very first day at this gigantic MSU campus, things are, well, they're already getting a little overwhelming. She's basically a walking ball of excitement and pure terror, and she's about to get so lost. So picture this. Candy gets distracted for literally 1 second by a squirrel wearing a tiny hoodie, of all things, and when she looks up, her entire tour group is just gone. She's totally alone, right on the edge of a full-blown freshman meltdown, when this voice behind her just goes, "Need some help." And this is the moment, right here. In her own words, he looked like he'd just stepped out of a dream. We're talking perfect hair, perfect smile. The guy was basically glowing. It is that instant, cinematic, capital L love, or, at the very least, a capital C crush. The shock of seeing him is so real that Candy actually starts to get dizzy, like she's about to pass out. But before she can even hit the pavement, he catches her, steadying her by the waist. Her heart just stops. Time freezes. I mean, you can't write a more perfect, dramatic meet cute. So he walks her to the auditorium, and to calm her nerves, he gives her a small piece of candy for good luck. But it's her internal reaction that tells you everything you need to know. She's not just grateful, she's seriously vowing to build a shrine for the single piece of candy. That's how you know this crush is 100% real. So after that life-changing encounter, Candy has one single mission: find the guy. But, being an introvert, she needs backup, and she finds it in her new, very extroverted and very intense best friend Trixie, who immediately turns this little crush into a full-blown private investigation. Trixie wastes absolutely no time. She launches Operation Find Mr. Nice Guy. They've got a description, they're doing stakeouts around campus, and they're even attempting these police-style sketches. And their first big break? It comes pretty quick, but it doesn't exactly go to plan. So their first lead turns into a complete and hilarious disaster. They spot a guy in the right blue hoodie. Trixie literally shoves Candy towards him. But when he turns around, oh, he is very much not the right guy. And Trixie, being the loyal friend she is, immediately calls him an ugly, delusional lobster cracker. So yeah, the hunt is off to a pretty rough start. After that, their search just becomes this montage of hilarious failures. They almost get kicked out of history class for sketching him instead of taking notes. Candy spots him in the library but totally panics and dives behind a bookshelf. They have this painfully silent, awkward run-in at a vending machine, until finally she gets a picture of him by pretending to take a selfie, a truly brilliant modern-day spy tactic. But then the story takes a really sharp turn. Trixie just stops coming to school. She's sick, and eventually Candy finds out she's actually been admitted to the hospital. And as Candy's worrying about her friend, this new horrible thought starts to creep into her mind. Candy starts connecting the dots. Trixie mentioned her own crush was a sophomore. They both had run-ins in the same building on the same day. What if Mr. Nice Guy is also Trixie's crush? The thought just makes her stomach twist into a knot. So, driven by worry for her friend, and let's be honest, a desperate need to know the truth, Candy skips her last class and bolts to the hospital. She gets Trixie's room number and starts walking down the hall, just bracing herself for whatever she's about to find. A nurse exits the room, and Candy peeks inside, and her absolute worst fear comes true. She sees it. Mr. Nice Guy, her crush, is sitting right there next to Trixie's bed, looking after her. Her world just completely shatters. Heartbroken and just so confused, Candy runs away. She spends the whole weekend ignoring Trixie's texts, completely convinced she's lost both her crush and her new best friend. But when she finally faces Trixie back at school, the confrontation she was dreading takes a very unexpected turn. As Candy is trying to spill her guts and explain her feelings, Trixie just cuts her off. She whips out her phone, makes a call, and says with that classic Trixie intensity, "Get over here now." She is not messing around. Someone is on their way to clear this whole mess up, right now. And who shows up just moments later, looking all confused and out of breath? Mr. Nice Guy himself. He sees Candy crying and immediately looks worried, asking what's wrong. And this is the moment where absolutely nothing makes sense anymore. And then Trixie drops the bombshell. Okay, confession time. This guy's name is Drew, and newsflash, he's my brother. Your crush is my brother. The entire drama, the entire hunt, was all built on one tiny piece of information that Candy never, ever had. Of course, Trixie insists she's mentioned her brother like 23 times, but Candy was always way too lost in her daydreams about, well, him to ever notice. It's a classic case of crush-induced selective hearing. We've all been there. So, with the air totally cleared and the massive misunderstanding finally resolved, Trixie strategically bails, leaving Candy and Drew alone. And what happens next is the most painfully awkward yet incredibly sweet first real conversation between two super shy people who have a massive mutual crush. They both kind of admit this is their first time with this whole romance thing. Drew confesses he's liked her since day one, but was way too shy to say anything. And then Candy reveals she kept the piece of candy as a lucky charm. It turns out they were both just as nervous and smitten as the other. And the conversation just builds from there. After all the confessions, their hands brush and he asks if he can hold hers. He shares another piece of candy with her. And then, finally, Drew musters up all his courage to ask the big question. Would you like to go on a date with me? And Candy, of course, says yes. The story ends with her feeling a sweetness that's sweeter than the candy melting in my heart. It's just the perfect ending to a chaotic, hilarious, and ultimately very, very sweet story of a first crush. And it kind of leaves you with one final thought. Maybe sometimes the most confusing paths really do lead to the sweetest destinations.